Well, good morning, sports fans, and welcome to another edition of the PR Man and the Coach Talking Ball on the BallFather Podcast, presented by Sportskeeda. I'm Reggie Roberts, your host of the show, longtime NFL communications executive, and we're joined by our good resident Tampa insider, JP Peterson. What's up, man?
What's up, Reg? How are you, my friend?
Hey, bro. Loving life, living the dream, man. Looking forward to chatting with you. Been talking about this with some friends all week, and looking forward to catching up with you to what's going on the Tampa scene in sports. Heard you guys earlier this week, 2 days ago, introduced Dave Canales as the new offensive coordinator?
Yes. I was at that press conference, got a couple of questions in with the new coordinator. This dude was prepped and ready, brother. A PR man's dream. I'm just saying, you didn't even, I don't know if Nelson Luis our good friend had to prep him at all, because he's like, man, I just came off all these interviews. I got these elevator pitches ready to go. And he was spitting knowledge, bro. It was so refreshing to hear somebody at the podium, an offensive coordinator, talking about the real meat and potatoes of the new NFL offenses, the creativity, and this, he talked about it being simple but looking very complex to the defense. There were so many great buzzwords that he used. And look, you win a press conference, good for you. That's always good to have, right? You want that one in here. You want to check that out. You don't want to lose the press conference, but it doesn't gain you a yard, right? It doesn't do anything. You didn't put any points on the board yet, but if you got points for talking, he scored about 45, 50 points in the press conference. Really, really knowledgeable guy, high energy. And that's something that you really feel that this Buccaneers staff needs right now. I mean, it's kind of a very low energy, cerebral staff. Todd Bowles is not a ball of fire, and most of his coaching staff, there's not a whole lot of fiery guys. We talked about, Tony Dungy back in the day, and you were there, and everybody was, when they're losing, this is a terrible way to see your coach on the sideline. But of course, when you're winning, so it all works. Yeah. But Tony had, as you know, Herm Edwards, Rod Marinelli, Monty Kiffin, Mike Tomlin. I mean, these guys are hair on fire coaches that were all turned into, head coaches. But this staff really hasn't had that. And so on the offensive side, you bring in a guy with some energy. Now, Dave Canales has never called plays in college or in the pros, but he's been tutoring under some really good guys in Seattle. I mean, Pete Carroll, arguably a Hall of Fame coach. But the thing is, Pete Carroll never made Dave Canales his offensive coordinator. He passed over him three times at least. But everybody has the time, right? And he's 41 years old now, so this is his time to take his shot at calling plays. And and as he explained, calling plays isn't the be-all, end-all for the OC, right? It's game planning. It's communicating the offense. It's getting people to understand what the concepts are and to execute them flawlessly. And his philosophy is, look, we're not going to have a John Gruden voluminous playbook of 7,000 different plays. We're going to have about 40 to 50 plays, but there's going to be a lot of different variations over those plays, and even probably less than that when you're really getting down to it. But they're all coming out of different formations, different personnel groupings. So it looks one way, but it is actually something else. It's out of the Rams playbook. Shane Waldron was the OC in Seattle last year, and that's kind of the offense that he's bringing, the terminology. So that's from the Sean McVay tree. A lot of misdirection, a lot of pre-snap motion, the RPOs, and creating that conflict. The modern NFL offense is very collegiate. Right, conflict for the linebackers and secondary, where you just don't know if it's run or pass on every play. You're going to put that mesh in there. Is he going to pull it and run it? Is he going to pull it and throw it? And that's the modern offense, and that is not what Tom Brady was running. And this offense was just dead in the water. So a breath of fresh air.
Well, it's interesting because Coach Bowles, to me, wanted a little bit more balance in the offense. He wanted a little bit more run, pass, variation. And you're right. I'm not so concerned if the guy can call plays. I think if the guy understands scheme, understands situational football, I think he'll be effective. And from all accounts, he seems to understand that.
He really does. And he talked about marrying the pass game and the run game. And last year, if you were listening to a lot of the big time analysts, Kurt Warner did a video on Is Tom Brady Broken? and talked about he's looking at the tape. He's like, I don't see where the pass game and the run game are married in any way. They don't work off each other. Dan Orlovsky said the same thing, and you turn on the tape, it was plain as day. You see these offenses like the Rams offense and some of the other more creative offenses. There's a lot of bootleg in it. There's a lot of waggle in it. The quarterback is always moving around. There's a lot of, as I mentioned, complexity in terms of, is it run or pass? And that's what this guy really understands. And he Seattle averaged 4.8 yards per carry. I mean, that's beast mode, right? That is beast mode. The Bucs averaged, I think, 3.2, which was historically like one of the worst running games in the history of football. So to hear somebody talk about marrying the pass game and the run game, that's what Todd Bowles wants. You're exactly right. He wants that balance. And last year, by all accounts, Bowles wanted to fire Leftwich in midseason because he just wasn't listening to him. It was like the offense coordinator had gone rogue, and he was just not getting the balance that Todd wanted. And to be fair, when they ran the ball, they didn't run it very well. No. So they've got to scheme it up better. They've got to do it better. They're going to spread it out better. There's going to be a lot more run-pass conflict. So I think this offense will be much less predictable than it was last year.
I think interesting enough too, the Bucs have a lot of decisions they got to make in this offseason. Yes. Specifically, they're $55 million over the cap, and which brings me to my next question, which involves the linebacker, Devin White. Highly talented out of LSU, athletic, really, really smart. But I can remember one thing when we played Tampa Bay. I used to hear our coaches talk a little bit about him and how they would take his over aggressiveness and use it again. He's not very good at coverage. I mean, he's a freak athlete, but he's not very good at coverage. What are you hearing about him? Because I'm thinking, you might need to move him.
Well, I agree with you, and it's a complex situation, and you're totally right on that part because we see it all the time. Good offensive coordinators will set him up, especially in the red zone. Figure out who his man is, who he's supposed to be covering. There was a play in the playoff game 2 seasons ago against the Rams where a seldom used tight end kind of slips out into the red zone and gets a touchdown. And that was all on Devin White. They rolled a little half roll for Matthew Stafford, so it's kind of out there and Devin's going to take the bait every time. Leaves his man, goes to the quarterback to try to get the sack, and the quarterback's just waiting for him to come. Come on, okay. And this happens all the time. He hasn't progressed in terms of knowing when to take chances and when not to take chances. His game has not matured like you would hope it would playing next to a Levante David. He takes too many chances, freelances. He doesn't get off blocks. I mean, turn on the tape, and if a lineman gets up into him, he's getting driven back 3, 4, 5, 10 yards. And he makes splash plays. That's why the name Devin White. He makes splash plays, but a lot of times he's gambling to do it. And he's a great blitzer, very good blitzer. He comes off the edge and he's so fast. He's an excellent blitzer. So he's got a lot of, excitement to him, but when you really break down the tape, he's not, PFF, for instance, doesn't grade him out well at all. He's one of the most graded line, but he's consistently a Pro Bowler. He gets a lot of talk, but listen, if I'm the Bucs organization and I can get a second and third or maybe even a 1 for Devin White, I'm doing that all day long. Because here's the deal. You got to pay, if you're going to keep him, you got to pay him next year. You're going to pay him, this linebacker money that some of these other guys are getting. No, 14, 15, maybe $20 million. No way. He's not that kind of player. And I love Devin as a person. He's got a great personality. He loves to ride horses. Good dude in the community. And I'll tell you this, and my friend Scott Reynolds at Pewter Report told me this, and Todd Bowles loves Devin White. I mean, loves him as a human being, like as another son. And he's very, very personally close to him. And as you know, in the NFL, that's not good. You got to be able to evaluate players on their merit, not how much you like them or their family or everything. because there's so much to like about Devin White. If you're in his presence for more than 10 minutes, he's your best friend. He's a great dude, but this is business. And if you need more draft picks to replace, you need to cut salary cap money, not add to it with big contracts. Yeah. So I agree with you, but I don't know if the Bucs upper staff has the stomach to trade Devin White. So we'll see.
Well, let's go on the offensive side of the ball. Kyle Trask, there seems to be a lot of noise about, he's going to come in, they're going to install him as, or he's going to be able to compete for the job. What's your take on him, being that he's from Florida and down there in your neighborhood? And what's your take on him?
Well, Reggie, as a PR man in the NFL, there are 3 seasons in the NFL. There's the season, football season, and then season. Right now, we're in the lying season, right? So whatever people say about who their quarterback is, don't believe a dadgum thing. Don't believe anything. It's a bunch of BS, as you know. Because nobody, we have free agency coming up. We got the draft coming up. Nobody wants to reveal what their plans are, and certainly the Bucs don't, because they have a lot of different options that they could go to. Right. Now, Kyle Trask, as Dave Canales said the other day, is the only quarterback on their roster right now, so he's the only one they're going to talk about. So they're talking about Kyle Trask a lot. Jeff Darlington had a story the other day that, the Bucs feel like Trask is the best quarterback in the division. Now, I don't know how
the hell that thing. Come on, Jeff. What the hell?
First of all, who is the quarterback in New Orleans? Who is the quarterback in Carolina? We don't know who they are. And Desmond Ridder, I guess, is the quarterback in Atlanta. And Desmond Ridder played a hell of a lot more than Kyle Trask did, and he played pretty damn well, if you ask me. So I don't know where they come up with that. But Darlington, clearly a story has been planted from the Bucs that they wanted out there that Kyle Trask is their man. Well, they can say that all they want, but nothing they've done has showed that Kyle Trask is the man. They had a chance in the last game against Atlanta, which meant absolutely nothing, and they knew they had this quarterback sitting there that they haven't really gotten a look at. They could have played him the whole game against Atlanta. Tom Brady didn't need to play. Blaine Gabbert sure as hell didn't need to play. And they gave Kyle Trask 2 series at the end of the game, and he threw 9 passes. So they could have got a whole game's look of Kyle Trask if they really thought he was the man. Maybe they've had a change of heart. I don't know. Maybe Brady was just so insistent on him wanting to play, but then why did Blaine Gabbert play? I see what they say about Kyle Trask, but I guarantee you they're bringing in a veteran quarterback, not a high-priced guy. And I think they're gonna draft a quarterback as well. So I think this quarterback room is going to be a lot more interesting than it is right now. I don't think Kyle Trask is the entrenched starter in Tampa Bay in any way, shape, or form.
They picked 19th this year, don't they? Don't they pick 19th? Okay.
19th. And I think personally at 19,
that's who
they're
you
going to take him.
That's who they should take.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
I think he is one of the most underrated. He's had a little bit of a journey and the whole thing, but I got to see him twice last year. I think he's special. I really think I think he's going to be a baller in this league. I really do.
I've been looking at a lot of tape of his recently because I think he's a very intriguing prospect. He's 25 years old. Right. He wowed everybody at the Senior Bowl. He didn't even play, but all of his interviews, he's a very mature young man. He understands football, comes from the Josh Heupel system. Yep. Which is very quarterback friendly, but it also shows you, if you're an accurate quarterback, you can get the job done. He's great at distributing, gets the ball out of his hands. I think he understands the concepts really well, and he's a great thrower of the football. I would like him to be a little bit more, have a little bit more mass to him. He's very slender, 6'4", 220. Listen, I think, to me, quarterback in the NFL is about accuracy. It's about accuracy and throwing on time with anticipation. That's the most important quality you can have. He's athletic enough. He can run, so he can do all your RPOs and do everything you need in terms of movement in the modern NFL offense. And for some reason, he got the ACL injury, so I think that's pushed him down the draft chart. But when I look at Will Levis throw and I look at Hendon Hooker throw, and I see he's a much better pure passer than Will Levis is. I think a lot of people see Josh Allen and Will Levis, and he may be. But for my taste, for the modern game, I like what Hendon Hooker brings to the table. I think he's a good fit because of his maturity. I think he can come in right away, and he's played a ton of ball, very much like Brock Purdy did at Iowa State. And he shows up in that San Francisco offense, and he's ready to go. Nothing's too big for him. I think Hendon Hooker's the same cat, and you don't have to worry about small school stuff. I like it.
I completely agree. There's going to be so much movement this offseason. I can't remember an offseason where you got so much movement with the coordinators and not so much the head coaches. We could have a whole show on just that.
Yes,
let's switch gears a little bit and talk about your guys who are playing out of their minds. What are they? 15-0-1 in their last 16 or something?
At home, yeah. Talk about the Lightning, right? Talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning. Yeah, they were 15-0-1 at home in their last 16 games. And, they are now because they got a point last night in a game against Buffalo, which was a wild game, brother. It was playoff atmosphere at Amalie Arena last night. It was bonkers. And we had 4 goals in 4 minutes in the second period. And I tell you what, Tage Thompson, this Buffalo team, I tell you what, they are talented and they can freaking go. They do not mess around. This is like a fast break, up and down hockey team. And when you make a mistake in your end or shot block or something, they get the puck out. Tage Thompson is going down the ice. He's 6'6". He's got such a long reach with that stick. It's so hard to get the puck away from him. And he is talented. He had a hat trick last night. 39 goals now for Tage Thompson. But the Bolts were down 3-1. They were down 4-2. They were down 5-3, and they came back every time and tied the game. So, good fight from the Lightning last night, but they left Vassy hanging out to dry way too many times last night. By my count, 4 breakaways, another 3 or 4 2-on-1s, 3-on-1s. And normally Vassy makes those saves and the Lightning win games. But when Vassy is what I call mortal, when he's not, the immortal greatest goaltender in the game, and he just plays average, the Lightning usually lose. They do. They just, because they are so used to him making those big saves time and time again on breakaways and odd man rushes. But last night was ridiculous. They hung him out to dry so many times. And he wasn't, Vassy let 3 goals, 3 of the 6 kind of went through him, 5-hole or through the side. Very un-Vassy-like. So, but this is on the team defense as a whole, not even just the defenders. But so that was but these are kind of good games. You see these from time to time. And John Cooper is, he comes in with kind of a wry smile into the press conference because he knows, this was a teaching moment. He knows his team, they're sitting in there. It's like, it's like you come home and your dog got into the garbage. You don't see the garbage yet, but he's kind of like, on the floor, kind of cowering, and the guys knew what they did last night. I'm sure he walked in the dressing room, they were like, we're sorry, Coach, man. We were trying to score 20 goals tonight. Because Buffalo's the 3rd highest scoring team. So the Lightning were like, you get into it like, okay, we can score with you guys. Let's go. You want to play a track meet? Let's go. Right. Cooper does not want them playing like that. And when they get that mentality that they want to run and gun, he freaking hates that. And this is what happens. So they got taught a lesson last night. Okay, boys, you want to go out there and try to get your points again. Everybody wants to get their numbers. You want to run and gun with Buffalo. This is what you're going to get. And they're like, okay, Coach, we'll get back to playing the way we should play.
Yeah. That doesn't bode well for you, especially late in the season. With guys, everybody's kind of nursing something. That you definitely don't want to play like that. I mean, I was thinking,
you got to be responsible in your end. You can't be letting guys sneak out the back end 4 or 5 times. And so it was it's one of those moments where I think you got a point out of it, and I think it'll reset the team now. Get back to playing the way they will. They got Detroit, who suddenly has won 7 of 8, and has beaten the Lightning twice this year. So they're on the come, this Detroit team. So they got them Saturday back-to-back in Pittsburgh, who got their ass kicked last night, 7-2 by McDavid, Draisaitl, and the boys, the Oilers. So we got Pittsburgh on Sunday. So it's a little quick 2-game back-to-back road trip here. But Vassy is unbeatable. Again, after he loses a game, especially a game like that where he gives up 6 goals, you put him right back in the net on Saturday against Detroit, and I'll bet a lot of money that they don't score more than 2 goals on Saturday. So they'll be fine. They'll be fine.
Like I said, with regards to hockey, the boss has sent me a note. and they wanted me to ask you about the Rangers. 2 weeks ago, they were one of the hottest teams in hockey. I think they were like, I think I read that they were 12-2-2 since January 1. I mean, I'm not sure what they are, but they like I said, they made a big boy move when they signed Tarasenko, who's a monster, has been a monster his whole career. Do they have it? Will they be there in the playoffs? Do they have a chance will they get there?
Yeah, because I don't think they're done. They're making moves. They're going to keep going. I think the rate. Listen, Shesterkin, for my money, some people believe he's the best goalie in the game.
Yeah.
He ain't far behind Vasilevsky. He's not, and Shesterkin gives the Lightning a problem. When you got a goalie like that, you're going to be good in the playoffs. I think the Rangers are going to get it together, and I think they'll be a threat in the playoffs because that goalie situation is and this guy's proven himself in the playoffs. He's really, really good. So I think they've got some time to get it together. I think the Rangers will be a factor with Tarasenko and some other moves. They'll be a factor in the playoffs.
Let me ask you. Let's switch gears and go to baseball and talk a little bit about the Rays. The Rays are in camp now, as with everybody else in baseball. Matter of fact, I'm making plans to go see my Yankees down in Tampa. There
you go. Come on over.
I'll make sure I call you. We'll get together for dinner with the girls. We'll do that sometime next week or the week after. I was on the phone with somebody the other day who covers the league and covers the AL, that covers the Yankees, but he covers baseball too. And we're just talking. And I said, he asked me, was I going to go see the Yankees? We're talking about the Yankees. He said, well, what you need to do is just go check on your Rays. And I'm like, what do you mean? I said, they're not my Rays. I'm not a big Rays fan. He goes, yeah. He goes, the Rays had a situation. We called it a situation.
It was a situation.
He said it was a situation. He said, but it didn't get much play. What he said was it kind of got covered up. And I'm thinking, I said, well, let me call. I said, I got a podcast with my boy JP this week. Let me ask him. I said, he knows everything. So what happened? Apparently they signed Diaz the offseason to $24 million extension, 3 years, 8 year. And Arozarena, I think he got a 1 year deal. He's playing for $4.1 million this year. What happened?
Well, Arozarena and Diaz got into a scuffle. Now, the team's official position is it was a verbal scuffle. But this verbal scuffle kept Yandy Diaz out of the lineup for 2 weeks. So, that must have been a tongue lashing that he got. No, my sources tell me, my sources, he's not that much of a snowflake. My sources tell me that there was a throwdown between Arozarena and Diaz. And they got into it, and Diaz wasn't even in the clubhouse for like a week and a half. So that must have been one hell of a shiner that he got. And he didn't play down the stretch at all. In the Rays the last 2 weeks.
They were terrible. They were the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you take Yandy Diaz out of the lineup, they're only 300 hitter for goodness sake, and your offense is even worse than it normally was last year, and their offense was dreadful last year. And then you take Diaz out of the lineup, and Arozarena is just completely hot and cold. 1 month he's carrying you, the next month he's striking out 4 times a game, and he's just so incredibly inconsistent. But when he gets hot, he can carry it. And they just left out a disagreement. I don't know what it was over, but they played terrible baseball. They went into the postseason and scored 1 run in 24 innings in 2 games against the Indians. They could not get a hit. It was so awful. So yeah, just look at the results. This team always plays well down the stretch. They've always, chemistry is a thing that the Rays have always had. It's a winning edge for them because they have so many young players that are trying to prove themselves, right? Every day they come in hungry. That's a winning edge for the Rays. Most of these teams have a bunch of fat cats on guaranteed contracts, for 45 years at $800 million, talking about your Yankees, by the way. And they just, there's not a whole lot of incentive 162 to come to the yard every day and give it your best, right? That's just human nature. It's just human nature. But these guys are hungry. They're trying to make their way. They're trying to make their money. There's a pot of gold for them at the end of the rainbow. If they can play good baseball, they're going to get the opportunity with the Rays. So they come with an edge every day. So this team chemistry took a huge hit. I'm shocked, to be honest with you, that Arozarena and Diaz are still here together. I thought Arozarena was going to get moved in the offseason because, and there's a story that came out a couple of weeks ago or last week, And we're talking about, Arozarena doesn't really listen to the scouting reports, how pitchers are trying to pitch him and really dig into, what they're doing and how they're approaching him. He just doesn't do the work. And so this year he's doing the work. That was the part of the story, that he's now listening to the coaches, looking at the video, trying to figure out where teams are getting him out and how they're getting him out, because he strikes out a lot. So, they're trying to coexist. The funny thing is, the first thing Kevin Cash said to his team this year was, hey, let's continue to be good teammates and let's continue to support each other. I'm like, okay. When you have the two biggest personalities on your team, arguably, going at it, and then the team just absolutely nosedives afterwards, it's a thing. It's a thing. And nobody talked about it. We talked about it on my show, but no, they tried to just, because that's what the organization wants to do. I get it. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to make it a big thing. But if this were New York, bro, oh, man, it would have been on the New York Post. They would have had a great headline.
It should have been everywhere. It should have been everywhere. Tell me they seem to have, you and I have gone to Rays games together. It's funny. Your team goes up, you stand up and clap. My team goes up, I stand up and clap. It's really kind of funny. They seem to have a bunch of really nice people on their roster. Nice guys, fire boys. They don't seem to, Diaz kind of snarls a bit, but he doesn't really seem like he has an edge. Does Arozarena have an edge? Or no?
He's got an edge. He's got an edge. I mean, he's the guy. And, he made, I think, 13 outs on the bases last year, which was third worst. He got thrown out more stealing than anybody. He takes a lot of dumb chances on the bases, and I think it pisses off his teammates, to be honest with you. I think that's where the friction comes from, because he's just not a smart baseball player. And he's, it's something he said the other day, I got to be smarter, I got to be better. He's just kind of a wild card. And you saw him in the postseason a few years ago. Yankees got a lot of that. They hit 10 home runs. It's unbelievable. One of the greatest postseason performances, led him to the World Series. But again, super inconsistent. And this is the thing. If Randy can grow up and be the man that he's talking about being, getting into the scouting report, making smart choices on the base path. I mean, sky's the limit for this kid, man. He is. If you can hit 270 with 21 home runs, 41 doubles, steal 30 bags, and you're not even paying attention to the scouting report, imagine what you can do if you're using that great Rays metrics knowledge that they have available to you in these books and the coaching and the video work. I mean, if he can get into that, man, he could be a superstar. I don't know if it's in his DNA though.
With the speed and with the aggressiveness and the edge, he'd be amazing. He's got
all the tools. He's got all the tools, and he's not harnessed them. He's a great story. He's a Cuban defector. At 3 times, I think he tried to defect and get to Mexico on extremely dangerous situations and rickety boats and all kinds of crap, and finally got to Mexico and finally got into the big leagues. He's a Scott Boras client, so he'll never sign an extension here with the Rays. But they have control of him for another 2 or 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, in arbitration. So he's going to be around here unless they can find a trade partner, right? Which I think they're still trying to find one. We'll see.
You're on with the PR man and the coach talking ball on the BallFather Podcast here with JP Peterson finishing up. Hey, let's go back to the Bucks just for a second here. You're right. Coach Smith calls it the non-football playing season. With regards to helping them to assemble the roster, okay, quarterbacks to do. I'm thinking they're going to cut Fournette. I'm thinking they're going to cut Fournette. What other moves do you think they're going to make to sort of kind of before the draft, or any other moves that they're going to make prior to the start of free agency?
I think Donovan Smith, their left tackle, is $17 million on the cap this year. If they cut him, I think they can save almost $12 million. He did not play well last year. He had a dislocated elbow in the first game against the Cowboys, and he played with it all year long and just did not play well. Everybody knew you could take an inside move on him, and he just had no strength in that elbow. So, and he had some issues off the field as well. So. Yeah. Some personal issues, so I feel bad for Donovan, but it's bottom line business. It's a big old contract, and he's just not performing. So, and they can get a lot of relief by letting him go. So I think that's a move. I think Fournette is gone. Their kicker suck-up is probably gone. Cam Brate, the tight end, is probably gone. I think those are obvious moves. And there's some contracts still that they can work around. They're $55 million over the cap, which I think is the worst in the NFL right now. But with those cuts that they make, now they've got Brady retiring before June 1st and not spreading out his cap hit. They have to absorb $35 million of dead money for Brady this year. So that's a tough pill to swallow. And I'm still not sure whether that was Brady's idea or the Bucs' idea. I think it was Brady's idea. I don't know why the Bucs would want to take all that cap charge in 1 year when they could spread it out, and this cap's going up by $25 million a year, pretty much this year. So that, I don't think it was the Bucs' choice. I think Brady kind of stuck it to him a little bit with that deal. But the reason he may have done that is because he is now unencumbered. Had he signed another 1 year deal just to help the Bucs out, the Bucs would have had his rights for this year. And if he wanted to come back, they could have asked for some compensation. Now, I'm sure the Bucs would say, hey, we're not going to do that. But, for Brady's like, yeah, but you did it last year. You kept me. I wanted to go to Miami. You wouldn't let me go. So I'm not going to give you a chance to get me again. So, again, this is speculation on my part. I don't know. There was talk about him spreading it out, and then that didn't happen. So what happened? I don't know. But that's the reality of it. They got to take that $35 million hit this year. So they're strapped. There's no question about it. I think they're looking to get more picks, maybe trade down in the draft. They've got 23, 24 free agents. They got to re-sign. They got lots of holes on their roster. They got a good core. They got a really good core. And if they can get the right quarterback, it's going to be interesting. Now, and speaking of that, people are connecting the dots. Geno Smith, Dave Canales in Seattle was his quarterback coach. They've just elevated Thad Lewis to be the quarterback coach here in Tampa Bay. Thad Lewis and Geno Smith are high school buddies. They're both from South Florida. They're good friends. So people are, tying them together. I just don't think the Bucs have the money to get Geno Smith because he's going to cost you some money. And I don't think they really want to marry themselves to an older quarterback at this particular time. I think they're looking to develop a young guy because that's how you get cap relief, right? If you're not paying a quarterback, you draft one or you go with Kyle Trask, your quarterback, deal is zero almost. So I think that's the way they have to go. And I think they might want to bring in a veteran, but they just don't have the money to do it.
JP, just want to finish up a little bit about the Bucs and with the cap. I mean, they're $55 million over, which I think is the worst in the league right now. Got some moves. I think that sort of gives credence to the fact what we talked about earlier about Devin White, how the Bucs might be trying to find a trade partner to sort of let him go so they can get a little cap relief and get some other picks to sort of do some things to maneuver that cap.
Yeah, I think again, it's Todd Bowles got the stomach to do that because Lavonte David, I think, is 33 now. Their other inside linebacker, he's a free agent. Are they going to bring him back? He played pretty well last year. He's declining a little bit, but he's a phenomenal player. I think he's the glue to the defense. I think they want to bring him back, and it'll be a lower number, I think, for Lavonte. I don't think there's a team out there that wants to throw Roquan Smith money at him. He's just too old at this point, but. I think if they could get picks at second and third for Devin, they would replace him in the draft with a second or third round inside linebacker, and you're going to take a much lower cap hit. So even if they wanted to keep Devin White, I think going forward for salary cap, and again, I just don't think assigning him to a long-term deal is in the best interest of the Buccaneers. I just don't see him as that guy, that Roquan Smith type of guy. So we'll see. I think those other cap casualties that I mentioned, I think those guys are on the chopping block. Those are the major guys. People talked about Mike Evans being traded. He's not being traded. That only saves him about $1 million, $1.2 million on salary cap. You'd rather have the player, no question about it, than take the charge and not have the player. That's dumb. And Godwin's not being traded either. He's a centerpiece of the. He's too good of a teammate and a team leader. Even if you're rebuilding, you got to have guys like Chris Godwin around to teach the young kids how to play football.
It's finished up with JP Peterson, the PR man of the BallFather Podcast. I saw two things that I wanted to kind of get your take on. One involves coaching staffs, and the other one involved Aaron Rodgers. I want to get to the one on the coaching staff first. So. This is the season where people are getting coaching staffs and sort of putting staffs together. And I saw something about in Carolina, the Panthers, the new coach is Frank Reich.
Yeah.
So I saw an article yesterday. They're putting together the staff. Deuce Staley's now on that staff. My boy D Hall is going to be an assistant DB's coach, so we'll definitely get him on the podcast. Jim Caldwell, who was with us in Tampa, is assistant head coach. He's on that staff. But here's the thing that kind of jumped out at me. Okay, Reich has put together one of the most veteran staffs in the league, with only a tight end coach yet to hire. His staff has 191 years of NFL coaching experience and another 70 years as players. That group has a combined 10 Super Bowl rings, including 2 won by Caldwell in 2006 as assistant head coach for the Colts, and again in 2012 as offensive coordinator with the Baltimore Ravens. So I thought about that, and then I looked at the coaching staff that John Gannon has put together in Arizona. Okay, so Gannon's 40, no NFL head coaching experience. Okay, brand new head coach. He's going to be working with a first-time NFL GM who has no previous GM experience. He hired as his defensive coordinator a guy named Nick Rollis, who's 29 years old, whose only experience in the league has been quality control coach 2018-2019 and a linebackers coach in 2020, and he's Phillies linebackers coach in 2021-22, and now he's the defensive coordinator with the Cards. His offensive coordinator is a guy named Drew Petzing, 35, offensive assistant Vikings 2014, offensive assistant wide receivers coach, quarterbacks wide receivers, Minnesota Vikings, and then he was the quarterbacks coach the last 2 years in Minnesota, and now he's the OC. I say that to say this: coaching and experience matters in the NFL.
Yeah,
it matters. Okay, so who would you think would have a better chance of success, short term and long term? Frank Reich and his staff, or John Gannon and his staff? If you, it just jumped out at me. I'm thinking, there's got to be an adult in the room. And the one thing I thought, I remember when Tony Dungy got to Atlanta. I'm sorry, Tony Dungy got to Tampa Bay. Yeah, Rich McKay was the adult in the room. So the coaching staff that Tony wanted to have had some holes in it, and Rich said, okay, instead of this guy, let's go with this guy. We need a veteran here. We need this. You needed an adult in the room to sort of say, hey, coach, let me show you something you don't know. And that obviously didn't happen in Arizona with those numbers. That obviously didn't happen.
No, it seems like a young exuberance there. And the other part about it is Reggie, and you know this, when you're at this point of the season, all the good coaches are gone, man. It's like, it's like when you're in your late 50s, trying to find a good girl, man. All the good ones are taken, bro,
Well, and you seem to have found a good one, and I found a good one. So, but that's just
a lot of research, though. There's a lot of research with it. But they're hard to find. And we found them, but they're very hard to find, right? Finally. Yeah, no, these younger coaches have great energy. And the same thing with Dave Canales, even though he's 41, the new OC at Tampa, to bring it back to Tampa. Nobody wanted this job. Let's just be honest. Todd Monken was one of the top coordinators. He went to Baltimore. He came here. He's like, look, man, I love you guys. I've been here before, but you don't have a quarterback. And Todd Bowles is a lame duck. Everybody knows it. Todd Bowles is a lame duck. If he doesn't win this year, he's gone. You're going to hitch your wagon to a guy who's probably going to be fired, and then the new guy's bringing in new teams. You're going to move your family here for a year, and it gets a little crazy. So the Bucs had a hard time finding an OC that wanted the job because of those reasons. And I'm sure the same thing existed in Arizona with Philadelphia playing until the last game of the season. Now you go out there and try to put together a staff. It's hard to do. It's really hard to do. So I feel for them. But they're going to struggle. Absolutely, they're going to struggle. You got to have adults in the room. Look at consistency wins in this league. Continuity wins in this league. And older coaches seem to have a pretty good feel for what the hell's going on. I think staffs have to have a mix. Like I said, with Tony Dungy's staff, and this staff in Tampa has some really good veterans in Bowles and a lot of good. Tom Moore is there at 84 years old. Bruce Arians is still around, although he's stepping back a little bit. So I think they've got a good mix. I'll be very interested. I'll say this: the Bucs last year with Tom Brady scored 18 points a game. Bro, that is awful. It is awful. The Bucs will be better on offense. I don't even know who the quarterback is, and it's a new OC that hasn't called plays, but they were so bad schematically last year and so dysfunctional offensively. They'll be better offensively this year. I don't know if it's going to be good enough to win the division, but they'll be better.
The division stinks. It stunk last year. It's shaping up to stink a little bit this year. And
you never know.
What's that?
You never know, though, Reg. Right? These teams come out of nowhere, and so I see Carolina putting together some good pieces. I like their coaching staff. We'll see what they do at quarterback. Reich is a proven head coach. Atlanta should have swept the Bucs last year. That first game, they got robbed on a horrible roughing the Brady call. And they were winning that. They got a good young nucleus, so I think they're on the come. I think Saints are kind of an enigma. They still got some good pieces. Don't know who the quarterback is, but I think this year somebody's going to win 11 games this year. I don't know who. It's not going to be an 8-win team again winning this division. I think somebody's going to win 10 or 11 to win this division.
Finish it up here. Aaron Rodgers was in the much publicized, talked about. He took in the season. He took some time off to go to a retreat, a darkness retreat in Southern Oregon. Okay, I mean, all my friends call me and said, "What's a darkness retreat? Reggie, you know of it? Have you heard of that?" I've never heard of it. I've heard of guys just sort of kind of unplugging, going away to go drink their going to Vegas, going to Miami, going to South Beach.
Right.
We had a guy in Atlanta that had an apartment in Miami, had an apartment in New York City, and he had an apartment in where he was from in South Carolina. He had 3 places. So if you needed to find him, I had all 3 numbers, thank God, because sometimes I needed to find him. And he'd go to one of those places when he needed to kind of unplug. I've never heard of this, but according to reports, Rodgers went to a place called Sky Cave Retreats, and he left left Wednesday, 2 days after his scheduled entrance on Monday. And he told the Pat McAfee show that he spent 4 days in total darkness to contemplate all things and make a decision that I feel is best for me moving forward. In the highest interest of my happiness. Okay. He's played 18 seasons. His cap hit next year is going to be just north of $60 million. Woo. Okay, so I'm not sure I need to go into a dark room to kind of clear my head with knowing I got all that bread in the bank and I got all that bread coming. But I get it. I respect your right to choose. Any thoughts on Aaron and his?
Well, I wish he had some more complex problems to work out. I mean, he's got $120 million on the books guaranteed, right? Or whatever it is, something close to that. You got no kids to worry about. You got no kids to worry about. You can get any woman you want on earth that apparently is ready to go. You can be the Jeopardy host the rest of your life till you're 105 and make $50 million a year, cutting 3 shows on Mondays. I mean, but you play football for a living, for God's sakes. You don't even get hit very much. You're just incredibly gifted and naturally talented. I understand going into the dark, but that's going to take me about 5 minutes to figure that all out. I mean, 4 days. Right. What are you working on, bro?
4 days. I wouldn't need 4 days.
Are you gonna create some type of energy source that's gonna rework the entire world or something? I don't know what you're doing for 4 days in the dark. What are you contemplating?
He describes it as a room that's partially underground, hobbit-like structure with 300 square feet of space devoid of light, with a queen bed, a bathroom, and a meditation-like mat on the floor.
Maybe he was trying to figure out where the ring is. He's trying to find Frodo. I don't know.
I hope he gets it, but they need to figure out, because I'm thinking I've read where Bob McGinn, who's all things Green Bay's covered the Packers for 100 years, says the Packers are sick of it.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're done with it. I mean, you literally, what do? They go into the office and they're just like, okay, is he out yet? I mean, we can't do anything until he decides. All right, what are you doing today, guys? Oh, I don't know. We're waiting on Aaron Rodgers.
It says to me, okay, when did they draft the other guy, Jordan Love? They drafted what, 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
2 years, yeah. 2 years ago? Yeah. I mean, either he's ready to play or he's not ever going to play. And, $60 million. I just don't think you can win in the NFL with a quarterback taking up $60 million in cap space. They had to get rid of Devontae Adams. So I just don't know how you make that work. I don't know. And he used to be transcendent and be able to take you over the top and be that guy. He's not that guy anymore. He's not.
Well, listen, we always have a pleasure with you coming on. You're a friend of the program. We're gonna have you on a little bit more as we get a little bit closer to the hockey playoffs and as we sort of get into this what we call the lying season in the NFL. Take care of yourself down there in Tampa, man, and we'll have you on another week or so. We'll see what's going on with your ball.
Sounds good, Reg. Love you, brother.
Have a good one. Talk to you soon. All right, man. Thank you.
Yeah.